Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are back. We are continuing. We're continuing on with our look at the triennial Torah portion. We got most of the way through Genesis 24. I want to look at the rest of the chapter, Genesis 24, right around verse 42 down through the end. We'll look at, again, I want to, have us all remember that we're looking at these things. We're looking at the Torah, and it is it's giving us a story about stuff that literally happened. But at the same time, we have to be able to always be able to see and understand the spiritual significance that we find inside of here. So there's all types of little jewels and nuggets to be found. So we want to see if we can see a couple of those things over here at the end of this chapter. So let's go over. I think if we just look at, let's see, 42. We're in Genesis 24. If we just look at verse 42 through let's see, through 51, I think will get us caught up, back to like a refresher from last week, and we'll just go forward from there, because there's a couple things I wanted to deal with in those verses there. Genesis 24, we'll just start off with 42 through verse 51.
Okay, and this day I came to the fountain and said, Yahweh Elohim of my master, Abraham, please, if you are prospering the way in which I am going, see, I am standing by the fountain of water, and when the young woman comes out to draw water, and say to her, please give me a little water from your jar to drink. And she says to me, drink, and let me draw from for your camels too. Let her be the woman whom Yahweh has appointed for my master's son. I had not yet ended speaking in my heart, then seeing Rebecca was coming out with her jar and on her shoulder, and she went down to the fountain and drew water. And I said to her, please let me drink. And she hurried and let her jar down from her shoulder and said, drink and let me water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels too. And I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Noah's son, whom Malak bore to him. Then I put the nose ring on her nose and the bracelet on her wrist. And I bowed my head and worshiped Yahweh and blessed Yahweh, Elohim of my master Abraham, who had led me in the true way to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you are going to show loving commitment and truth to my master, let me know. And if not, let me know, so that I turn to the right or to the left. And Laban answered Bethuel too and said, the man comes from Yahweh. We are not able to speak to you either evil or good. See, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahweh has spoken.
Okay, very good. So we see over here where this thing that happened already is kind of being retold to the brother Laban and the father Bethuel, the brother and father of Rivkah. And so the interesting thing that I wanted to look at and kind of, get deviate a little bit over here is when we look at verse 49, where it says, "And now if you are going to show loving commitment and truth to my master," right? Eleazar, the trusted servant, is talking to the Laban, and well, he's actually talking to the father, and Laban's there. It's interesting that he has so much to say about the situation where he's just the brother. He's almost as if he's like the spokesperson of the situation, when in reality, he's the son, and there is a father there. Well, it says over here, right, in verse 50, Laban answered, and Bethuel too. So he's almost like taking the second role in the situation. And then, if you know about the story as it goes, Laban is really who's kind of dealing with the whole. It seems like he's like over the family, but I'm saying over here, he's leading as well, it seems, because he's the one that's talking up. And then also Bethuel too, like. Yeah, same guy. Same guy. Yeah. So I'm saying that right here, I'm saying that he's speaking to the father because the father's over the situation, but just based on how we're looking at what's going on, Laban is the one that's talking, and then, oh yeah, Bethuel too is like what it says over here. But when we look at this over here, the servant goes and he tells them what happened, and he's wanting to answer, like, let me know. Is we gonna do this? We gonna make this transaction? Because remember now, when we're talking about marriage in these times, husband literally means possessor. It literally means that the wife was literally the possession of the property. Is that what you said? Property. Well, yeah. So when we look at this, right? The servant, he wants to know, he's about business. He's been about business. He wasn't trying to eat or none of that. If we remember from last week, first things first, let's deal with this business, right? So over here, he's talking to them. He's like, let me know right now if we're gonna do this, or else I'm just gonna keep on rolling, right? Because again, we remember he had this prayer, and then as he was saying it, it was happening in front of him, right? So he got that confirmation from the Most High. Now he's telling them about it, and he wants an answer, and their answer is interesting to me, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit. And where it says over there in verse 50, Laban answered Bethuel too, and said, "The matter comes from Yahweh. We are not able to speak to you either evil or good. So Rivkah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahweh has spoken." And so this is what I wanted to deal with a little bit, where they was able to understand that this situation was something that the Most High was orchestrating. They was able to see it. Right? They saw all the evidence, and they saw all the things that pointed to, to the bear witness. This was a miracle. Like, it was a miracle. right? The exact thing down to the letter is what happened. And it wasn't like she was over there listening to what he was saying and then, oh, let me do this so that it just was, right? So the servant recognized that it was from the Most High, and the elders of the family over here recognized it as well. So at this point, they're like, what we supposed to do with this? You sitting up here giving me this decision that I got to make, but the decision been made already. The Most High ordained this. She yours, take her. What I'm supposed to say? What I'm supposed to go against the Almighty? Right? That's basically what they saying over here. This matter, I can't even speak to the matter. I can't say nothing about it. The Most High ordained it. That's what it's going to be. So what I wanted to deal with a little bit, just thinking along those lines, is that when we look at this, it's really a matter. This is a lesson for us in faith. It's a lesson in faith. They saw something. In their case, they heard something. And they believed it, what they heard. And then they had action based on what they heard of and believed in. Right? Because they could have said, well, we understand that this is from the Almighty, but maybe if I could just get another sign or something, just to verify.
That would have been me.
Uh-oh.
That would have been me. I would have taken this.
But that's not what they did, right?
I was like, I gotta come down on clouds for me.
So we know what Yeshua said about though. Yeshua said it's an evil and wicked generation who looks for a sign. Meanwhile, that's what happened. So they saw it, and then they're just like, it's done.
I see this mean. Now that you said that, it said when I be asking, I ask God to show me a sign, and he be like, "Let me show you again, dummy." You just said that and thought about it because I don't ask something, you'll give it, and we still move forward.
So it's interesting when we look at this, thinking about this idea of having these lessons in faith. If we just think about who these people are, they're relatives, yes, of Abraham, but they're the group of people that Abraham left from. Moses said for Abraham to leave from these people and go and do this other thing over here. Why couldn't he just deal with all of them together? There was something about Abraham, or maybe it was something not about them. But hold on one second. I'm just saying that. So when we look at this, right, when we look at what's going on, we get this great lesson of faithfulness from people they're connected to Abraham, but they're not like the promises unto Abraham and his seed, not going backwards or sideways. But these people over here are giving you this huge lesson. It's a huge lesson where it's something that they didn't see with their own eyes. They just heard the story about it. And then that was all it took. That was all that they needed. And there was no conversation even needed to be.
They even put their opinion in it. I love how they said, I can't even speak good or evil, just take them. Like, right. No opinions, no nothing, because it's good. I love that.
It was just, this is what it's going to be. And this also caused me to think about Jethro also, because it's the exact same thing, where he was off in Midian, where his daughter is off with Moses, and he just hears about what happened. He didn't see it like children of Israel. Israel literally saw all of these miracles and things, right? And then they believed. But all he did was just hear about what happened. And then he said, this day, I know that Yahweh is the Elohim, right? And then, so I'm saying all that just to say, when we think about this idea of faith, right? It's a very important. It's the foundation upon which we live on these things, right? And this is the kind of faith that we gotta have, is where when we are able to bear witness of the Most High and His dealings, we just gotta be to the place where we just taking ourselves out of it and just, what can you say? I got to do this.
Well, in our society today, even if we do what the LM did, we say word of mouth, there's still something that don't make sense. In our they
Yeah.
don't believe. These people went right there and accepted.
Right, and it gotta be that way. It gotta be like that. It gotta be that way. So let's look at a couple things. Let's flip over to Deuteronomy 32 and 20. Let me pull that up here. Deuteronomy 32 and verse 20. Because we're going to we're talking about faith a little bit based on what we see over here in the Torah portion with Laban and Bethuel, right?
Let me hide base from them. Let me see what their end is. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no trusting.
Okay, so that word trusting is emunah. That word trusting there is emunah, which is faith. Emun, which is something that's established, something that is trusty, trustworthiness, faith or faithful or truth. So it says over there that the Most High is hiding His face from those. It says hiding His face from them and calling these people a perverse generation. These ones who don't have faith, right? I think it's Hebrews where it says that without faith, it's impossible to please Him. Right? So over here, he's saying he's hiding His face from them. Imagine if you just looking for somebody and then they purposely, you play hide and go seek with the Most High. And He's excellent. He's an excellent hider. The Most High is, if He don't want you to find it, right? But the formula over here is trusting. If you're able to trust in Him, He's not gonna hide from you. He's gonna make Himself seen to you, right? But if you're not doing that, He's calling you perverse, a wicked. What that say in the KJV? What kind of generation do it say? What it say in the KJV? I could go to. Oh, it say froward, a very froward generation. What that word mean? Froward. Perversity, fraud. You just a fraudulent generation. Right? You perping. That's what he used to say. He used to say, you out there perping. Right? Perpetrating a fraud. But that's the category that you fit into when you don't have faith, right? When you're not standing firm, because that word emun, which is the same thing as like amen, it's all the same root, is firmness, right? It's not wishy-washiness. It's not kind of it's stable. It's not unstable, right? He's saying unstable. You froward over here, right? But we look at these people again. We look at these people over here who not from Abraham's seed. They're connected to Abraham, but not from his seed. And they was able to see this thing over here and just whatever. It's done. Most High must have did that, and they not even with the Most High like that.
And like when I'm not in this space from those, like it kind of goes with the more away he's taken from you, you don't even get convicted for the things that you're doing that's mentally wrong. There's no fear in it. You don't feel like the spirit like telling you you're wrong. Like you're so like I was reading in Psalms where it say like I think it's Psalm 36 like. He does not despise evil. Like, in fact, the crookedness is not hated. Like, you don't even see. There's no connection with letting your wrong. That's how far away from this to where you can't even hear if you're being like any type of affliction or anything.
Well.
36 and what, sis? 36, 1 through 4.
I mean, but what you saying is what we just read over here, right? Because that person that you talking about, the Most High done hid itself from them, and they're a perverse generation, right? So you can't be connected to the Most High outside of firmness or emunah or trusting. We could just leave it at trusting, just English. Like if you're not able to trust in the Almighty, then He is hiding His face from you, and he's putting you in the category really of the wicked
and the strong.
It literally is a strong delusion for you not to trust in Him, because imagine again, we can't really overemphasize what's going on over here. Right. These people who not the people, Abraham's cousins, right? Where he was supposed to go away from them. He went away from them. Moses said, leave these people over here and go to the place where I'm sending you to. If he wanted them to be with those people, he could have just stayed right there and did it. And they all could have went. But the Most High took him away from those people for him to go and do his thing. But these people's over here, they teaching us something over here. We can't say that they wasn't.
He used them, and he said that he'll use the enemies of the footstool. He used them. He even used, like, you got the Roman soldier who, when everybody was not even rejecting Yeshua, had no faith in him or whatever, belief in him. But the Roman soldier came to him and said, was it somebody was sick? Who was sick?
The servant.
The servant was sick, but he was like, and Yeshua was gonna go to his house and said, "You can't come to my house; it's not worthy of you." But he had so much faith in him.
You just say
He had
the
so
word.
much faith and believed that this Messiah was the actual Messiah. Like the Roman, he wasn't a Hebrew.
Yeah.
And he said, I haven't seen this much faith even in
Yeah. So that's interesting that you bring that up, because there's probably 2 times where Yeshua really talks about kind of being amazed by people's faith. And one of the times was the times that she just brought up, where you got these people who's on the outside. Right? So, but it's the same thing over here that we see with this over here, right? It's the same exact thing where you have these people who are outside of Abraham and the blessing, and they are exhibiting for us, they're giving us a picture of faith, of firmness based on just hearing. They just heard what happened. They even see, like Israel coming out of Egypt, seen it. They heard the Most High's voice, seen him at the top of the mountain with fire and thunder and lightnings and all that, and heard his voice. And that still wasn't enough. But over here, they just hear this. They just heard of this thing that happened, and no conversation. What you talking about? What I'm gonna do? Obviously, she's with you. It's no problem, right? Okay, let's look at some more of this because we want to talk about faith a little bit. Let's look over at Habakkuk.
What?
Yeah, Habakkuk.
I like that.
Pull out your tables of contents so that you can find
Yeah.
Habakkuk.
Hey, that's one of the fewest books people read. Man. I used to mess that word up.
Chapter 2.
Habakkuk.
Chapter 2, 4 and 5.
Habakkuk chapter
Oh,
2.
hold on 1 second. Let me find it too.
That's one of my favorite chapters, or books rather.
It only got a couple chapters in there, so you
Yeah.
might miss it while you flipping through,
after,
right?
Mike Nighthawk.
We want to look at chapter 2 and read verses 4 and 5.
Give y'all another minute.
Say that one more time.
Habakkuk 2, verse 4.
4 and 5.
That's a task in itself to find this book.
I mean, you look for Isaiah, Daniel, Micah, start slowing down a little bit.
You got it? Y'all there?
Yeah.
All right, this is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4.
Verse 4 and 5.
4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
See, he whose being is not upright in him is puffed up, but the righteous one lives by his steadfastness. And also, because wine betrays him, a man is proud, and he does not stay at home, because he enlarges his appetite as Sheol, and he is like death, and is not satisfied, and gathers to himself all nations, and heaps up for himself all people.
Okay.
Why is betraying?
Okay, so we want to concentrate on a little bit when we think about the idea. It says, "He whose being is not upright." So let's look at it's saying who's not upright. But let's see what that word is up there. So upright, this is probably, let's see, low. 3808 is low. This is our word right here. Upright. Yeshar. Little Moshe's, one of Moshe's names. Little Moshe, I mean. Yashar, which means to be straight or even, figuratively to be, or causatively to make right, pleasant, prosperous, direct, fit, seem good, please. Okay, there's a lot of things over here, but it's translated over here as being upright. You know, that's a stand-up guy over there, right? Upright. So it's saying, see, he whose being is not upright, it says, he's,
And when you think about them, you think of like a balloon. That's easy to be like pop, like that's easy. That's
Yeah.
easily wavered.
Ooh.
That can easily be aired out quickly.
yeah. Well, we think about like Passover. We think about Passover, the thing that you're trying to, or Feast of Unleavened Bread, the thing that you're doing away with is those things that puff you up, right? Leaven, sin, right? He whose being, that's probably soul. Oh, it says soul in the King James, which is nephesh. When your being it's talking about not upright, then it's puffed up. It's the exact opposite. It's not even hard to really think about this concept that is telling us. When your soul is not upright, then it's puffed up, which kind of don't make sense when you think about it, because if I'm like inflated, like those little things that be out in front of the stores, you know, the air, that thing that puffs them up is making them be erect.
It's perfect like you said you saw it.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong by saying
That's all
that.
those people in HR puffing stuff. Remember that?
I don't remember. Yeah, that might be before. but so exactly. So we got to think about what's the thing that's making you be that, right? If it's your own self, if it's just that little machine that's blowing the air up in you, that ain't nothing, right? But the righteous ones live by, there's our word again, firmness. Firmness. What word is that? Emunah. So that's our same exact word, right? The righteous ones live by steadfastness. So again, we're learning faith over here by what these two, Laban and Bethuel, was saying over here. The righteous ones live by firmness. This is how we have to live our lives. Firmness. Right? Because when we're still looking at Habakkuk over here, and also because wine betrays him, talking about the ones who are not upright. And it said is a man is proud and he does not stay at home because he enlarges his appetites as Sheol. Well, Sheol enlarges because people keep on dying and people keep on going in the grave. But this is how he's enlarging his appetites. But appetites is directly connected to the being or the soul, right? Because that's what your soul is. It's just about your desires. What are you fixing your appetites on, right? This one who's not upright, the one that's puffed up, he's enlarging his appetites. He got all kinds of things that he's doing all kinds of things, right? Just enlarging it. And it said that one's enlarging his appetites as Sheol, and he is like death, and he's never satisfied. He's never satisfied and gathers to himself all nations. When you talk about the idea of gathering, we got to think about what does that even mean if you're gathering in all nations, because you're never satisfied. You're going to all of these different places. When you're dealing with these other nations, they have all of these other interesting things that you could get involved in, but these things are always connected to idols and things, right? But this person, this not upright person, he's gathering them things all and heaping them all upon himself. And again, when we look back, we have these ones. It didn't take no convincing for this. Just a straight telling of what happened. And then they was hooked by that. I mean, if we can't learn something from that, I don't know what else to do up in here, right? It wasn't no theatrics involved in none of this, right? It was just what happened. And they knew based on that, the Most High is behind this. I got to be behind it too. All right, we still talking about this, but let's look over in Romans.
Romans 10.
Romans chapter 10. We're gonna look at a few verses. We probably just want to look at a couple verses at a time. Let's see. Just start reading at the first verse and then I'll stop. Hold on, let me get over there first. Let's see, Romans, because we're talking about faith over here. Because if we ain't got faith, I said if we ain't got faith, we ain't got nothing. Even these people over here who didn't know nothing about nothing, they had faith like a mug. Right? Okay, go ahead and start reading that verse 1.
Romans 10:1. Truly, brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is for deliverance For I bear them witness that they have an adored for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For not knowing the righteousness of Elohim and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. For Messiah is the goal of the Torah unto righteousness to everyone who believes.
Okay, let's just talk about some of this real quick. So when we think about what's going on over here, the author over here is writing to these people, right? And he's talking about his people, Israel, right? Where, you know, he wants for his people to have this thing that's been made for them to have, right? But verse 3, where it says, for not knowing the righteousness of, hold on, verse 2, for I bear them witness that they have adored, King James, I think, says zealous. They're zealous for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For not knowing the righteousness of him and seeking to establish their own righteousness. Right? So that's kind of just like what we looked at over there in terms of thinking about the idea of being upright and being puffed up, right? Being filled with the ruach, or just being filled with that machine that blows air, right? Being filled with something that's from this earth, or being filled with something from above. So when we think about what Paul's over here comparing, the idea of the people trying to be righteous in and of their own selves, where when we keep on going down here, we see that the righteousness that's necessary is the righteousness that comes from Yeshua. Because there's a difference. Right? There's a difference between you trying to do things and righteousness being imparted to you. So you read the 3. Keep on. Hold on.
Read the 4.
Let's see. So it says in verse 3, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim, which is Yeshua. And verse 4, Yeshua is, so this is interesting over here. This is one of those verses where, you know, if you go to some of your Christian counterparts, right? This is the one, they're going to pull this out on you every time. Every time they're going to pull this one out on you. What does it say in King James right there? In Romans 10:4. I think it says he's the end of the law.
The end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes.
Yeah. And if I don't really understand what the new covenant is, then I'm gonna do and say just like they say. Well, it says he's the end of the law, right there. So how you gonna sit up here and try to get me to do the law where it says that Christ is the end of the law? Well, I mean, I don't think there's a witch law involved. It's just the law, period, right? But it do say, hold on, what does it say here in the King James? It says, it says it right there. We could just read the whole verse. Even if we said that, even if we just kept it in the English, in King James, where it says, for Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness. Even if we just read that, we could get to what it's talking about, right? Because the law is not the thing that makes you righteous, right? The law don't make you righteous. So that's the only thing. This is what the writer's even talking about in the first place. You can do all the things all you want, but if you got a wicked heart, then you're not righteous just because you're doing things.
That's just like the scripture says that you can prophesy, you can cast this out, you can do this, you can preach, but if you don't have love, you're like a clashing symbol, which I stress that to many all the time.
It's not about doing things. because we can find all these places where these people that are doing things. Pharisees was another example, right? Because they was doing it all over the place. The Pharisees was. Yeah.
You know, Baptists always say, well, at least unless your righteousness supersedes the Pharisees. I said, you don't know what that is? I said, the Pharisees lacked they lacked something. It was love. It was love. Our righteousness supersedes that was love.
Right.
But you can do all that and still look the same. You can do all that and still look the same as you just look the same. You do the same.
Yeah, but it's not only about what you look like. You do gotta look like something, but it also got to be something that's going on the inside. So think about. You can't see it.
If it's internal, you're going to look like something.
Yeah.
If it's internal, you're going to look like something.
But you could look like something that don't be internal. Though.
Right. Because guess what? And you
Well, you saying that, but think about this, right? When we think about the circumcision of the heart, and it's just what we're talking about, right? So the circumcision of the heart is a kind of the fulfillment of that physical circumcision.
Right.
But who going around checking to see if you circumcised?
Yeah,
You go ahead and drop trowel and let me see if you really circumcised. Who doing that? It's something that you can't see. Well, I'm just saying the physical circumcision is something that you don't see.
Yeah.
But it should say you should know by their fruits.
That is true.
That's true.
That's
But what I'm saying is that somebody who not spiritually circumcised could still have some fruits. You could still be doing some things. I could know what I'm supposed to do. I got the list right over here. I got the list right here. I could know what I'm supposed to do and do it, and it look a certain way.
But in the physical, honestly, it won't look.
It could look. It could.
It'll look a little better, but you'll see.
Maybe.
Like I said, you'll see.
Now think about the verse that old Dave brought up with what Yeshua was saying. These people is doing mighty works for the kingdom. They doing all types of kingdom things, and from the outside they look spiritual than a mug.
Yeah, they do.
But if they're next to an actual real, here's what I'm saying. If they're next to an actual really spiritual individual, it's gonna be something distinctly different. You're gonna see a difference.
Maybe.
That's all I'm saying.
Maybe.
They might be looking all like this, but when they're around, it's like saying, when you don't when you like exposed to real or whatever, like when you could be thinking this is a person doing this for the king or whatever. When you actually get introduced to an actual real individual, you'll see a difference.
You might see a difference, but you might not see.
But it takes some training, discernment.
I know, but
word.
there is discernment. But what I'm saying is that, and the same thing is true with what Yeshua said to these people. Yes, with discernment, you would be able to make a distinction. But first of all, everybody not walking in discernment. First of all, but the other thing is that making the connection between the circumcision of the heart and the circumcision of the flesh, unless I'm sitting up here doing a thorough investigation about something, I'm not gonna see your circumcision.
But he did say we would know each other by the love we have for one another.
But what I'm saying is that I can act like I love you all day long.
I'm speaking from being in this path of trying to get it all together. But speaking from a person who's not on this path, and now they're gonna be easily fooled because of how these people.
I'm just saying that I don't want to sit up here and say that it's just cut and dry like that, because you're not wrong what you're saying, but it's not like always gonna be like that. It's gonna be those ones who you don't know, but the Most High know. The Most High know.
I know that. Listen,
The more you study this word, the more you study God. He's gonna make sure if you in the word, he's gonna make sure.
Are you talking about in you? Hold on, what you saying?
I'm saying the more I study the word, Yahweh gonna make sure that ain't nobody gonna come at me in that negativity. You know what I'm saying? You gonna know.
No, but these people we talking about is not, these people that we talking about is not coming in negativity. They coming in positivity. But I'm saying it's false positivity.
But one thing that she's saying is when you're really in the word, somebody, when you're constantly around that person, if they are, putting on a facade, eventually that facade is going to
Yeah, but I want to hear what you guys say, but hold on one second. I just want to make it clear what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not a blanket thing where you always gonna know, because you're not always gonna know. I'm in agreement with that this thing got to come from. It's gonna be chinks in your situation, but what I'm saying is that it's not always gonna be.
It ain't gonna be on the surface.
Right. It got to be that intensive investigation. Just like I'm saying, comparing it to the physical circumcision. Eventually I'm gonna know. When the closer I look, I'm gonna know whether the skin is there or not. But go ahead. What you gonna say?
Eventually, you want to know, but this counterfeit money can only be spent.
But that it begins spit though, right?
Even in darkness, even in my darkest days, I knew who was putting on the facade and who wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't I do that in my righteousness?
Yeah.
Because just because you're a light bulb don't mean you're shining any light. You're just a night light. A night light can't light up the room.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because I like what he's saying. It's just like counterfeit money. When you know the real thing,
Right.
when you know the real thing, you're gonna spot that
Like
light.
Sean said, it
Yeah.
takes investigation.
Right.
Because when
You gotta hold that thing up to the light.
Right, there you go. You gotta investigate. So you gotta look deeper than what's on the surface.
Yeah.
Always.
He did say he was gonna make a new house.
But you can't outslick a can of oil though.
And right along there in the can.
I'm just walking this earth. If this man over here perpetrated, there's no way in heck he gonna outslick me. I was like a can of oil. So if I was like a can of oil in darkness, imagine what y'all gonna do with me.
But all this, we saying all this because we talking about firmness and faith. Right? Is it eventually that one who's doing all of these things and perpetrating this fraud, eventually they're gonna fall, right? Because they don't have that steadfastness, right? They don't have that firmness. What we talking about in terms of this faith over here. But let's look more about this over in Romans chapter 10. What would you pick up? Verse 5 over there?
Yeah. For Moshe writes about the righteousness which is of the Torah, the man who does these shall live by them.
Okay, hold on 1 second. So again, I think the interesting thing the important thing that we had to think about, this idea of living by the Torah. So when we think about living by the Torah, right? We can't really say that because we outside of the boundaries in terms of keeping the law the way that it's supposed to be kept. Now, when Paul talks about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, we got to be in that spirit of the law thing, because according to the letter of the law, the letter brings death. Because why? Because I can't do all the things that I'm supposed to do. Well, we can't. Well, I'm saying that built into the law, there actually is built in. But I'm saying that we don't have all the components of that. We're in exile. We don't have a temple. We don't have the priests. We don't got none of that stuff. All the stuff that's built into the law, we don't got all the pieces. But now, if you're talking about the spirit of the law, that's a whole other situation. Where when and I use this analogy all the time, we think about the least of the commandments. Going up on a bird's nest, you should not take away the bird and the nest all at the same time. You're not wiping out the whole thing at the same time. But when we look at that law teaches us about loving kindness. That law teaches us loving kindness, right? So if I can learn loving kindness, it's not necessarily about taking the bird and the eggs and all of that. But what's the spirit of the law? What's it trying to show me over there, right? So over here, the writer's saying Moshe writes about the righteousness which is of Torah. The man who does these shall live by them. So if we want to live by the Torah, live by the law, how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? We can only partially do it anyway. Huh? Yeah, but to the best of your ability, you're gonna fall short because all the parts aren't in place.
I read in my devotion a couple of days ago. It stated that we cannot we're gonna be sin in this life, but we can strive to create everything to be blameless. That's what you like.
Yeah.
You gotta put the work in it, because the prayer without
We
the
can
work.
strive to be blameless.
Right, but you gotta put the work in. Like, I look at it like this here. I feel like when you're so disconnected from the Most High, I feel like the best way to even get right is for him to strip you down all the way, because he gotta be the one to rebuild you. Like, it really, you can't build yourself. You can't look for somebody else to build it. He has to really break it off. Like, you have to be silly broke apart, and he has to. I mean, you gotta be willing to be rebuilt, and willing and
Like what
but I feel like I mean, that's not honestly my interpretation of it. Like, getting you when you're up, because why get a person when they're already like halfway and they're a little bit doing good for themselves, like they're not really going to be open to just. I mean, they're going pretty good. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying like for the best masterpiece is the. I mean, what other masterpiece is going to be better than something that he built right?
That's why they say
I'm good,
it
thanks.
says brokenness. It takes brokenness
All the way down,
all the way down.
Because
Because
the best way.
if you're not, it's like not to say someone who hasn't been broken.
Like, you replace the pieces. Like, if you're already put together, if this camera's already together, then it's like you might be like in pieces, replaced this way. But like somebody who's been literally from the ground up, formed together by the Most High, like that's gonna look totally different than this one that's being like.
Now, but you're not wrong in what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but I want to add to what you're saying, because when we think about that in the context of what we're talking about over here, these people just were some regular folk over here, and all they did was just hear about the Most High, what he did, and then they was with it. There wasn't no convincing. They didn't talk about them reaching rock bottom. You could come that way. By all means, come that way. Sometimes for some people it takes for you to come that way because you already so puffed up anyway. But these people over here, they just heard about what the Most High did, and then they was just.
They might have ended up being, we don't know if when they got up there, they ended up being, because some people may come because they might be cool, but they'll end up getting a restructure.
Okay, remember, I'm not saying that you're wrong in what you're saying. I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm confirming what you're saying. I'm just putting an addendum on it, right? Because from what we're looking at, we have an example of these people where all of that extra stuff wasn't involved. All they did was just hear a simple story about what happened, and then they believed in the Most High, and they feared the Most High too, because they wasn't trying to do nothing else other than what he said was going to be. I'm not going to add to, what can I say? They had that fear already built in.
And just to I was telling, not crazy that's going over like some of the stuff that people who are not connected and they got this so much faith. Like 8 years ago, I was talking to one of my best friends to hang out with. We was like, I was connected to this like Illuminati study. And I was so like upset about how the signs been all around this whole time and all this stuff. So the person that I was hanging out with, she never was brought up in a church or nothing like that. So I was telling her how Halloween was pagan. Now at the time I didn't know everything was, but I knew Halloween was. So she was like, wait a minute, what, it's pagan. So I ain't never letting my son, I'm not bad with it. She was really like fearful of me, knowing that she partaked in it, so she stopped partaking in the Halloween. Now fast forward to today, that was 8 years ago. Today she been like basically reaching out, like little things to the social network, and she finally reached out and texted me. My number been the same. So like me just telling her, I didn't want to just spring up everything on her because I was just because I don't want to push nobody away or whatnot. But as soon as I got my picture, I started saying little things to her, and she was saying like, well, a lot of stuff is around her, and she is kind of like wondering, even the situation when I first met her son was like 5. He got in trouble at school for not taking the reasons because he didn't understand what he was saying, so he didn't understand if to do it because he didn't understand what he was saying. But I was trying to get her to come today. Now, in her exact words was like, she really want to come, but she knows that she's going to want to change. Like, now this is somebody who has no religious background. Like, knows, and for her to have this much, like, I know this is all hate.
And when you think about, like, if we think about what you're talking about long enough, you talking about fear, and you're talking about faith. But there's a perversion involved in that, though. There's a perversion involved in that fear and the faith because they don't understand that if I'm able to lean fully on the one who I fear, then he's going to take care of all of those things, right? So we have the aspect of fear where if I come, then I know I'm going to have to do these other things. So I don't want to. So there's fear there. Yeah, it's a perversion though. It's perverted because now because at the end of the day, it's me fixing my own self. I gotta get myself right, and then I'll be there as soon as I get myself together. Yeah, but it's just the beginning, right? But the thing that we gotta remember is that even though it is just the beginning, and it's not about you getting yourself right, it is the beginning of a journey, and it's the beginning of walking in a particular direction. And so you do have to have the thought of, I need to be going in a particular direction. You got to take another step. If you just take a step, you're not walking anywhere, actually. You got to keep on putting one foot in front of the other, right? A step ain't get you nowhere. A step, you got to walk, right? Okay, let's look at some more of we talking about faith, though. That's what we talking about. I don't know why Moshe has this ball over here. Moshe, take that over there. Matter of fact, give me the thing. Give me that. Okay, go back over there. Okay, what verses you on? 6. We still in Romans chapter 10, but we talking about faith that we saw over in Genesis, though. Romans chapter 6. Chapter 10, verse 6. What did I say?
10, yeah, 10 and 6.
What I say?
I thought that's what you said.
I hope that's what I said.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But the righteousness of belief speaks in this way. Do not say in your heart, who shall ascend into the heavens? That is to bring Messiah down, or who shall descend into the abyss? That is to bring Messiah up from the dead.
Yeah.
But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of belief which we are proclaiming.
Okay, just stop right there. So it's interesting. There's an interesting parallel that's been talked about over here. But when we think about what he's talking about, it's the same thing that that kind of the vein that we're talking about in terms of back in Genesis 24, where they just heard what happened and then they believed. So over here, the writer's sitting up here talking about all of these extra things that you got to have added to the situation to kind of persuade and convince somebody of a thing. You got all of this stuff right over here showing you. When we look, if we look back over in Deuteronomy, what even in the scriptures points you back to Deuteronomy 30, where it's talking of Moses is talking to the people, where you have all of these things showing you about the Messiah. This stuff I'm talking about, just what I just was talking about. You heard the voice of the Father already. He literally spoke, and you heard what he said. You seen all of the miracles. You seen all of that stuff. What more do you need? He's talking to these people over here with Messiah. They already know about Messiah. So I gotta kind of retell all of these things. Do I really believe these things in my heart? Or do I gotta have somebody sit up here and rehearse these things to me over and over again?
Right.
So we have to think about these things again. We're talking about this idea of we're talking about faith and firmness, right? It's really kind of a simple story, right? It's a simple thing that you attaching yourself to Messiah, right? It's not a complex thing. It's simple. Even a child can understand. There's something wrong with me, and there's only one way that I could get the thing that's wrong with me fixed. It's not a complex thing. Like, it's a simple story. I prayed to the Most High for this woman to come and give me water and give my camels water, and then it happened exactly like that. So when we think about this idea of faith, right, and firmness, of believing in this thing, you either you believe or you don't believe. If you don't believe, then now I gotta try to convince you. If you don't believe, but if you believe, I don't gotta convince you.
Right.
We don't got to go back and forth about it, because you believe. You're firm. There's firmness there. There's steadfastness there.
You know what? When I was talking with your wife, my sister, Mom, and she kept asking me all these questions about the little obstacles I was running into over the past couple of weeks. And I kept telling her, I'll be all right. Y'all will provide. Trust me, y'all will provide. And I had to come to that conclusion too, because there was a little bit of doubt, Tom. But as the Ruach showed me, y'all requires faith. As if you was going to open up that chair and sit in it.
Yeah.
Aren't you sure it's going to hold you up to the ground? Yeah, we'll have that type of thing. Yeah. So I did that, and everything worked out brilliantly, man. You know, it just increased it.
Yeah.
But when that happens, it increases your faith. You know,
right.
It makes you have more faith than that.
And then sometimes in things you do have to kind of rehearse things.
Right.
And it might be a case of faithlessness in you.
Right.
But the wisdom is you recognizing that and then building it.
Right. That's
because
right.
you just saying, well, I just got to keep on trusting it.
Yeah.
I can't see what's going to happen, but I got to keep on trusting it. I don't know. Maybe it might not work out, but I got to keep on trusting it. You convincing yourself.
Maybe you do gotta be shown to believe. Like, and it is like I've been shown so many times within just in this period that I just read in the Psalms like we said the children of like never be begging for bread or something like that. But it's like I've been kept afloat these situations all for the last few months.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's like obviously the faith is not where it should be at because I happen to really show you.
Yeah.
this
But
because of your
I
doubt.
think it's important to recognize what that is, though.
Right.
That it is faithlessness. That is what it is. And then so you guys sit up there and encourage yourself in Yahweh, like it's saying Psalms.
And that's the whole thing. I was watching that and I was getting that message. You have to start this lesson. We just got a Psalms and devotion and we keep reading. I'm like, I just keep seeing how we don't even I read it for 40. But I keep watching the prayers like how he had so much like trust into him, like to where when he was praying, that's David, he's a whole fighter. He could fight. Like he's but he's whole keep saying to him in the prayers like, my enemies making fun of me. Don't let don't he keep pointing him onto everything. And like this trust in him, like don't let them make a fool of me. Like his whole trust is in him and him being the one that's going to get him through knock his enemies down.
Yeah.
Everything was so devoted into just I'm giving to you, like handle this. Like and I'm like, dang, I really need to have that type of trust and faith where I'm bringing it to you. I'm bringing it to you and I'm trusting you that you want to make sure this is true. Like I really need that type of
And that's the picture of faith, though. Because how we do is kind of wishy-washy.
Stressing a little bit, like start like thinking of all what's going wrong.
Yeah. All the problems, and then that's
doing everything right, then you shouldn't have to worry about what's going wrong because what is I just said I read someone said you don't need to make sure that they have waiting
or having false expectations because things is gonna go wrong. But how you gonna operate when they do? I mean, the thing about faith is, and the thing about you asking for more faith, the only way you know that you got more faith is you're gonna get tested. That's the only way. I'm so impatient. I just pray that the Most High will make me patient. Well, let something about to happen to test it, and you're gonna find out whether you is or not, whether you passed or not.
Well, look at that guy that went to Yeshua, I think the hill of Silence, but he said, help my unbelief.
Yeah.
So I look at that, even I might get a little waverly, I can ask for help.
Yeah.
Like that guy did.
Right,
He
but
said, help my unbelief.
I agree with what you're saying, but I want to add to what you're saying though, because we don't want to find comfort in the fact that I could be wishy-washy. I know. Okay, I'm glad you don't mean that because we don't want to. That don't because faith is firmness. It's not like Jello. It's firm like a rock, right?
As humans, because we're human.
Wait, hold on. I hear what you're saying, but it sounds like an excuse a little bit. If it's not an excuse, you could correct me if I'm wrong. But it sounds. You're not doing that. But yeah. Okay, good. Because this the thing that we started talking about in the beginning is firmness. Right? And then so as soon as we talk about the fact, well, he done made me firm, but I know I'm soft a little bit. I know, and then I
That's like a preparation. It's like preparing to get soft. We underestimate our mind. Like that little part of that little part in our subconscious, kind of like it'll stagger you. So we don't want to think. That's one thing I don't ever want to think like, oh, we all fall short. If you say
Who'd you read
no
now,
one's
eight?
perfect, we all fall short. When you think that, listen, you automatically know it's okay. It's okay to fall short.
Here we go.
You supposed to think like that when you make a mistake. I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. And don't dwell on it. That's what the fall short. That fall short thought should only kick in.
When it's unknowingly, you didn't rehearse it, you didn't prepare for it, and you like,
Like,
dang,
don't dwell on it. Now don't do it
now
again.
let's go, yeah.
Yeah, I did that this morning, but my prayer was, oh Lord, help me. Because I didn't want to have my thoughts going in that direction, so I can see the Lord help me, which, you know, yes, it does. It does, absolutely.
Okay, let's read some more of this because we talking about faith. Look over in back in Romans chapter 10, and then read 9 and 10. Read 9 and 10.
That if you confess with your mouth the Master Yeshua and believing in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and one confesses with his mouth, and so is saved.
Okay, so hold on one second. So if we read that right, and we don't think about this properly, we're gonna think all this stuff just going on inside of your mind, and then that's all that it is. But think about this in relation to what we started off with in Genesis. These people heard the thing and they believed it. But the thing that they had to believe in caused for there to be action at the end. The action was letting the daughter and the sister go somewhere. That was the action. They could have said, I believe that the Most High ordained for you to take this woman with you. And then crickets. And then nothing happened. So when we think about this idea of believing in your heart and confessing with your mouth, there's action involved. It's a manifestation of this internal thing that happens. It's a manifestation. It's not just about me even saying something, because I could say all kinds of things, but is there real action behind it? And that's what this, if I sit up there and say, if I just sit up there and say, I believe in Yeshua, I believe that he died for my sins. I believe it. That's a confession right there, ain't it? I'm saying it. So according to this, I shall be saved. But we got to think about this in the fullness of what this talking about, because it's not just dealing with something that's going on in your mind. There's a literal manifestation that's happening. And when we think about this in regards to where we started, there's action involved. Action. There's proof. There's proof that you believe.
Yeah, I say that's true because this morning I'm still a little down, but I refuse to allow that. When you have them scriptures come in your mind, I was able to believe I'm going to be all right, you know, and just move on. And you know, put a little music on and just move on. Because sometimes you can, if you allow them. Now, these people didn't even get there. I look at Eliezer, he prayed first before he even went looking. He actually prayed and asked for Yahweh's help. That's what I did this morning. Lord, help me. That's what Eliezer did before he even went in each other. He prayed to Yahweh, help me when he asked for a specific thing. That's what I love.
Yeah.
He asked for a specific thing. Right.
Yeah.
Sounds like my situation.
So we have to remember the manifestation part, because you could have faith in your mind. Well, you could believe in your mind, but it's not really faith. It's not really firmness unless I'm walking in the thing. If I believe that the Most High is going to strengthen me to go and do whatever I need to do, but then I don't never go do the thing, I don't really believe it.
You know what? That's just kind of like you ever believe in something like if you think something is this way. I'm not talking about spelling that period. Everything lines up to what you really believe is this way. Like everything will start lining up because you're so focused on that's. So I know that we got the strength to do it. Like I know I had the strength to actually do it. So just to apply that same type of this is how you think a certain way about something and you fully believe in everything lining up. It's like
You helping yourself right now. You hurting yourself too.
But I'm standing. I know I got the power to do it. I just gotta like shift it. Shift it.
So what happened when you don't do it then?
You won't be accountable. Like, remember that you said that today.
Okay, so read verse 11.
It says, because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame.
Okay, so with this thing, right? We're really trusting in the Almighty.
Right.
Ain't no shame in your game, right? You walk around and you proud of this thing, right? It's not something that you hiding from nobody, because if you hiding it, why you hiding it for? Which, but Yeshua said, if you deny me before men, I'm gonna deny you before the Father.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
So when you talk about this idea of, it says whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. You're not gonna be put to shame.
Right.
You're gonna be actually glorified, it says.
Yeah.
Right? But when we walk around and we're not being that light, and we're being like Jello, right, and not firm.
Batteries.
Yeah, it has the appearance of firmness, but really it ain't firm at all.
And it's so funny because look, I was in the dollar store, right? I went to go see Nash. I went in the dollar store and I seen little night lights that ran by batteries, right?
Yeah.
First thing that crossed my mind was, wow, I know a lot of brothers that fit the description.
That battery gonna run out. We need to be hardwired,
Hardwired.
right?
Right.
And Jello got pork in it, right?
Yeah, it does.
So
Yeah, it does.
so how you gonna pattern yourself off of? We don't went away.
Unclean.
Okay. All right, let's go back. Let's go back over to Genesis. So again, we learned a whole lot about firmness from these people who wasn't even really supposed to be firm. But again, when you think about it, it's giving you that message that, it's not a complex thing. It's not a complicated thing. The Most High makes himself viewable by you if you have that firmness. Just because you just believe that he is. You just believe him. And he makes it easy. He shows himself to you. Well, I think if he's not doing it right away, it's not him not doing it right away. It's not you looking for him right. Right? Because he's gonna show himself to you. Hold on. Where's that verse at? Let me see if I got that verse.
You think about Joseph, when he literally showed himself. No, Jacob. When they wrestled.
Oh,
That
yeah.
blew my mind. When I tell y'all, I read that and that blew my mind.
Yes.
I mean,
All night long, God allowed them to wrestle with him.
He wanted to see how long he
they
could
called
go.
it the finial.
Yeah. He wanted to see how far he go.
We didn't know that.
He went the distance, didn't he?
With the distance.
He went the distance so much, he had to touch the socket, like, bang, get off me.
Right?
Get off me.
And I need to go
Until you bless me.
Come on. They had that type of dedication.
Yeah, I know who you
He likes
is.
that dedication. He
And you
likes
know
that.
what?
That's
I know who you is. You gonna bless me. Bow. Your name shall no longer be Jacob.
Israel. His name is
Israel.
Get James 4 and 6.
Yep.
Okay, we're going back to Genesis. We're going back to Genesis, but I just want to read this verse over here. James.
James 4 verse 6. But he gives greater favor because of this. He says, Elohim resists the proud but gives favor to the humble.
Okay, so we got to remember that when we saw the other verse where it talks about the Most High hiding his face from those who don't have faith, and over here we see where he's talking about resisting the proud, right? The Most High is he you might be looking for him in pride, and he ducking down, like he
eluding you.
yeah, right. But what they say about the humble?
Gives favor.
He gives favor to the humble, right? So when we able to come to him with a contrite heart, right?
And what about those who request that y'all show me your face, y'all? Show me your face. And he's showing it to you, but you don't have the Ruach of vision to even see it. That's another case, you know what I'm saying? Like the man in the boat. Remember the story about the man in the boat? I'm just waiting on God to come save me. He said to the man in the boat, the raft, and the helicopter. He ain't seen none of it. You know?
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to Genesis 24. And yeah, we're going back to Genesis. We talked about faith, and we did that based on the thing that happened over here. We want to finish up this chapter. Let's look at let's see. Let's drop down to let's see. Drop down to 52. Start reading that verse 52.
Genesis 24:52. And it came to be when Abraham's servant heard their words that he bowed himself towards the earth before Yahweh. And the servant brought out ornaments of silver and ornaments of gold and garments and gave them to Rivkah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. When they arose in the morning, he said, let me go to my master. But the brother and her mother said, let the young woman stay with us a few days, at least 10, then you go. And he said to them, do not delay me, since Yahweh has prospered my way. Let me go so that I may go to my master. And they said, let us call the young woman and ask her. So they called Rivkah and said to her, are you going with this man? And she said, I shall go. So they left Rivkah, their sister and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rivkah and said to her, let our sister become the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate them. And Rivkah and her young woman arose, and they rode on camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rivkah and left.
Okay, stop right there. So when you see over here, something interesting happened, right? A little time went by, and then a bit of like switch up. Little switch up. Well, we're gonna let her go, but just let her just hang out for like a little bit longer. Little switch up, right? And then so the servant, remember now the servant we thought about last week, we talked about this Eleazar, meaning Elohim helps, right? And we was able to connect that with the helper or the comforter or the Ruach.
Right.
So them in their carnality was like, well, she gonna still go, but just let her just stay just a little bit longer, maybe just 10 days or so. Right? But then that helper creep in like, no, we got to do that, right? We got to move this thing along. Right? Just like how what the Ruach is going to do for you, right? It's the whole point of the spirit in you is to actually lead you, right? and you supposed to follow the leading of the Spirit, right? But they could have just been like, nah, we got to have that. We got to have that 10 days. And then 10 days could have turned into 20 days or whatever, right? But, that's not what happened, right? We see that Rivka, she was ready to go. Right? That got me a husband. Right? And then,
Are you willing to go with it?
so yeah, but you're right, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that. It was about a decision that was made. They actually did. They gave her the decision whether or not she was going to leave now or in 10 days. But at this point, the transaction was made, right?
Yeah, it was.
No, there was a question in 58. They asked her, I thought that they didn't, okay, you could take her. But then they brought the question to her, are you gonna go with this man? So she could have said, but she said, yeah, but I think they.
Well, I'm saying that the question was, the question was about the delay. Because that's the only thing they was talking about was the delay.
Right.
It wasn't about if she was going, it was about when she was going. But I'm saying, adding to that, if we look at verse 53, the price, the payment was made. The transaction took place already.
Take the silver and gold and garment.
Yeah, that's what they did. Right? It wasn't just like let me just have your daughter. Okay, it wasn't that. It was about I need some payment. And he had all types of payments.
So they was tricked. He was paid.
It's a price. It's a price. There's a price to be paid.
Because the father is not giving his daughter to go to the household. You gotta pay the price to get right.
Yeah, because his help was leaving.
No, I think you gotta publish the best for you, I guess.
I think it's because his help was leaving. And they reimbursed him.
I didn't know that was our culture.
I didn't know that was true
Which part?
until.
Which part?
Until a couple of years ago, I forgot what part of Africa she was from. I was here, but she actually stated in this day and age, she said when her husband came to ask her father for her, he brought good. Now I was sitting there and I'm like, since that actually, her dowry, the man brought a goat to her father for his wife. So I know this here means a lot.
Yeah.
But back then, when she was giving her testimony about how, she got in the faith and actually stated that a couple years ago, I said to myself, wait, that really exists here.
Yeah, that's how the things was done. It wasn't just like you trying to be with me. You know what I'm saying?
Every religion, it's always back to the it's something that's related back to like the faith thing. The Christians be having some faith. We need to take some faith lessons from like they be having like the faith part of stuff. And I think it even down to like slavery when you think of like probably our ancestors might have had faith that someday that they was going to be free, but believe that their kids would be free. Say strong faith. Like you get pieces of everything that goes back to this. It just be scattered and don't ever be all together.
That's why whenever people say about our culture, we really have no culture. This is it. Like this is what we need to follow. This is
When people don't understand, that is true. That is true because when I was looking at something that was a lot of complaining going on. We need equal rights. We don't have equal rights. We're not this, we're not that. And it hit me. Obviously, they ain't been reading their Bible. There is no equal rights. There is no citizenship. We're in captivity. We're being punished for crying out loud. You know, they forget all that thing. They forget the remedy. The remedy says, if you seek my face and turn from your heathen stiff-necked ways, I will hear from you and heal the land. But people don't understand that. They ready. They trying to fight with a master plan without the master. They can't do it, man. This is what we were sanctioned to. No. That's what I be cracking up when people get pulled over by the police officers and they get to run their mouth. You can't do this to me. You can't. Listen, fool. You're in captivity. They can do what they want to do. You know? Now handle the situation with discernment. You know, that's the most crucial thing you can do, man. Use your wisdom.
You don't got it. That's the point. That's the problem.
They'll put all that energy into these movements, and you won't see nobody put that much energy into the word.
Right.
And they won't don't fight and do all this, but you can't do that without. I mean, he's the controller of everything. He has the final say, so he controls if they're able to do this and do it. Like nothing moves unless he's natural.
That's right. And he told us what to do. Hey, one of the key scriptures. If my people who are called by my name. Now check this out. When I went and did a research on the cargo, the slave ships and things, the names, all those names had y'all in them. All those names had y'all in them. And he said, my people who are called by my name. You know, and he told us what we should do. No one listened to that. No one paid attention to that, but they want to fight for this, fight for that, fight for this. You know, it's just like, wow. Even I did it in ignorance. You know?
Yeah. So when we think about that, we can think about that on this side of the situation, but I mean, the facts of the matter is that the only reason why we doing that is because we understand these truths. Right? We're looking at these people out here,
Right.
you know, and they trying to do these things. I mean, you want these things to be true for you.
Right.
But if you ain't got the right ingredients in your situation, then you know, yeah. So looking back over here, right, we see where, you know, we started off talking about the idea of the husband and the transaction that was made. We saw where, you know, the servant, he brought the gifts for the payment. He didn't come empty-handed. You know, they made that transaction. And if we go down, we read down to
1.
6. Okay, yeah, keep on going down there.
You at
61, where you left off.
Okay. It says, and Rivka and her young women arose, and they rode the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rivka and left. And Yitzchak came forth from the way of Beor Lahavrior, for he dwelt in the south. And Yitzchak went out to meditate in the field in the evening. And he lifted his eyes and looked and saw the camels coming. And Rivka lifted her eyes, and she saw Yitzchak. She dismounted from the camel.
She knew it was him.
And she had said to the servant, who is this man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. She took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yitzchak all the matters he had done. And Yitzchak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rivka, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Yitzchak was comforted after his mother's death.
Okay, so we see over here again. We remember back in the verses where we saw where the transaction of marriage was about an agreement, and they had the agreement. The marriage is about a transaction,
Right.
and they had the transaction. So they had that first piece. That is when you think about the marriage, you think about the idea of the covenant that you're making. They was essentially betrothed while they were separated. The servant went out, he made the agreement, he made a transaction. They was betrothed over there, and then when they came, when he brought her back, then we see over here the consummation of the thing, right? Where he was finishing off the covenant that was already made. He went out there, they made the agreement, they made a transaction, the betrothal, the covenant was signed, right? And then he comes back, and then they consummate the situation. Right? She never seen him before. Don't even know what he looked like.
Yeah.
Right?
But when she saw him, she was satisfied. Give me that bill. Hurry up.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thought.
Yeah.
That wasn't even part of the situation, right?
Right.
So it helps us to think about just the idea, just a different type of mind frame that was going on. They was coming into a situation.
Right.
They had the idea of the situation in their minds. And then they were just going and just working out the situation. It wasn't about, what kind of habits does he have, or does he snore, or what kind of food does he like? Do I know how to cook it? It wasn't none of that. They didn't have none of that.
Hey, Abraham did all that. Hey, Abraham was very smart, man. Very smart. He made sure that his son was going to have a solid life.
Yeah.
Sure of that.
And so, but the only thing that he knew was that this is the one that the Most High showed him.
Right.
This is the one that he brought.
Right.
Huh?
It could have been somebody else, but Yeshua picked her, Yahweh picked her, and she came to the well first. It could have been.
Yeah, but the other one might not have fed the camels though.
But that's what I'm saying.
And then he just had to wait.
When he prayed, Yahweh was already in action before he prayed.
Right. Yeah. So, but I'm saying all that to say, when we look at how they did things, it wasn't about you sitting up here and I want to make sure that this person has all of these things figured out and all of this. They didn't know what each other was like. They didn't even know. Am I going to be able to love this person or whatever? A decision was made between these two parties. They didn't even know each other, but the decision was made. The transaction was made. The covenant was agreed upon, and then they just went ahead and they did the thing, and it was signed, sealed, and delivered. Right?
I'm assuming that's what they did in the South. The parents made an agreement. We call them shotgun weddings. Whether they
Is that a shotgun wedding? I thought the shotgun when the girl came ended up being pregnant and the daddy was like, "You gonna finish the job." That's what I thought a shotgun
But
was.
that wasn't about
even if that was the way, they didn't have no say whether they wanted to be married or not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You gonna get married, this is the size one.
Yeah. But you taking out, I think you're taking out a part of it that is the part that gets you jammed up. The emotional thing, where I gotta sit up here and I gotta love this person, and then sit up there and marry.
that's where everything what you just said is where the dysfunction came in, where marriage delaying the process now, as opposed to I was just looking into that on how when it's arranged,
What's that noise?
would it being arranged.
Is that fan on?
Some of the marriages last.
That's what I'm saying.
Some of the marriages last.
I mean, when you said waiting for love to be the reason why you married.
The heater.
That leaves room for the marriage not to take place. And then it was like a little snippet that someone said that a lady was told by her friend don't marry for love, marry for security. And technically, that's what you should be doing. You know what I mean? Like when you think of how even when you look at how they came and worshiped God and had paid the silver or whatever.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like his daughter, he knew whoever he sent, the man he sent his daughter over to was going to be secure. Waiting for love, you might not even get married. You ain't gonna come across the one that you love. And another thing is like women are naturally loving creatures. So even though the marriage might have been arranged, we naturally have a love nurture sense that's going to kick it automatically. We're blessed with that. So the love can come along the way.
But when we talking about, see what you talking about kind of is that emotional thing though, right? Where that emotional love is something that's like based on something. Like this person, like they smell a certain kind of way, and I just love the way that they smell. Or she just make, well, I don't know. What I'm saying is that I don't know what the difference is. If there's a thing about you that's causing me to feel a certain kind of way, lust is just a strong desire for something. And it's kind of like and this thing that we're talking about is like a response to something. Even if we take it to like the physical piece, like this person look just the way I like for my people to look. And that's the thing that's causing me to be drawn to them, where it's a response to something. Where when we think about what true love is, it don't have anything to do with that.
Yep.
Because we think about the Most High, He loved us while we was yet in our sin. So He looked at us and seen a despicable thing, and then He was still like, I want you still.
I chose you.
It's right. It's not a response to something. It's not like, oh, this people is so great, I'm going to choose them based on that. It's not that. Right? So when we talk about love now, it's the same thing. It's not about a response to something. She cooks just the way I like it. Right. She looks the way that dress is fitting, boy, is yeah. So I'm saying that when we get a picture of what love is over here, when we see this whole thing, where it's what do it say? What do it say at the bottom over there? It says, read verse 67 one more time.
What did you say?
Verse 67, the last verse of the chapter.
And Yitzchak brought her into his mother's tent, Mother Sarah's tent, and he took her because she became his wife.
Well, wait a second. And now that I think about it, that could be some emotional love right there. Because he did just come out of the tent, after all. That could be some emotional love, right? But huh? but I'm saying that when we think about love in its purest sense, it's not an emotional thing. It's not a response to something. It's something that initiates the thing. It's the cause. It's not the effect, right? It's a decision that you make that I'm going to deal with you this way. I'm saying that I love you. I'm going to deal with you this way, and you know that I love you because I deal with you in this way. Right? It's proof. It's just like faith. Like I could say that I've had faith in the Most High, but I don't never trust Him, so I must not have faith. I could say that I love them. Yeah, I say that I love the Most High.
Right.
But I don't treat Him like I love Him. And how do you know? Because the proof is in the pudding. If you love me, keep my commandments. I tell my wife this all the time. If you love me, keep my commandments. Right? I'm joking, but I do say that.
I want to say that though, because as I always say, like in my book, what I always say. I said, in the pursuit of happiness, it's wise to move as a balanced thinker. Always examine what is authentic or not, because desperation can cause you to move impulsively by being blinded by counterfeit treasure. And I say that because of myself. You know, during my unwanted vacation, it was 2.5 years. I've been hung. So y'all requested my faith in him. And I had to demonstrate my faith because I have been without lust since then till this day. But I had a spirit of expectancy because I trusted y'all to bless me with the woman of my suitable companionship. Now, being that I had that spirit of expectancy, did I overstep my boundaries? Yes, because many times I would look at a woman and say, "Oh, y'all, thank you. Oh, she's for me. She's look good too." And now the whole time, y'all never gave me the green light. I ran through the green light. You know, I wasn't waiting for the green light because my spirit of expectancy was so overpowering that just because she was in the truth and knew her word and appeared modesty, but I didn't see the characteristic traits. But just when I wasn't looking, y'all said, "There she is." And it wasn't even an act of being lustful, because if that was a fact, I would have failed a long time ago as soon as I came out of jail. I would have been failed if it was an act of lust, you know? So what I'm trying to say is, as I always tell other people, and Maya Angelou even said, but I rephrase it, a queen, you know, should be so hidden in y'all that the worthy man must seek him first in order to find her. Whereas the worthy man who gives his heart in the hands of Yah, he will in turn place it in the possession of the queen that's for you. You understand? Now, if you have faith in Yah and you follow that protocol, all will be well. Because he's not going to give you something to hurt you. We do that ourselves by jumping the gun. You know, we do that all the time. I did it. "Oh, she's for me." Later on down the line, "Oh, no, she ain't." You know, "No, she ain't." Dang, my fault. No, she ain't. And the Ruach laughed at me, "Man, did I ever tell you to go? You got to wait, man." Smacking himself in the head, "Oh, dang, not again." But then I go look at him like, "But I didn't fall. I did not fall, though." So, but anyway, I am happy. I am happy with y'all, what y'all has given me. You know, I'm very happy.
Okay, so when we look at this over here, I guess coming to a close with this chapter over here, we see where, we see how one of the first times where we see all the processes kind of with marriage, right? The coming together, the price being paid, the agreements, even the choosing being something that the Most High is connected in, and of course the consummation of the thing, and also we see with this chapter, well, this ending part of the chapter, we got a excellent picture of what faith is. So we kind of looked at what faith is and what love is, right? We saw kind of two things that are kind of integral parts to our whole situation, faith and love, right? If we don't have either one of those things, actually one kind of facilitates the other, right? When you have true faith, the manifestation of that faith actually is love. Love for the Most High and love for your brothers, right? Your Israel, right? Okay, so that being said, anybody had any thoughts, questions, or comments about any of those things there?
Faith is the evidence of
I
things
gotta
hoped
get back, I
for.
gotta get back.
I didn't say that. Help me out, somebody. Faith is what? Tell me. Faith is the what? Evidence of what?
Of things hoped for.
And
Hold on, it's the faith is the substance of things hoped for,
the evidence of
and the
things,
evidence of things
What
unseen.
is the substance of what?
things hoped for.
What does that mean?
It's the substance of things, the evidence of things unseen.
Tikva means hope, so Tikva better get her faith.
No, he has faith. That's why he got you married. That's why he married to your face. But anyway,
But say that again, okay?
faith is a substance of things hoped for
Okay.
and the evidence of things unseen. You know, and without faith, without works, faith is dead. So they go hand in hand. So you can't just say, I'm saved by grace without working that grace and faith. You have to work that faith. You have to activate it by your works. You know? So therefore, Shabbat Shalom!
What scripture is that?
That's Hebrews 11. Okay, all right. That being said, let's say Shabbat Shalom.